They always say you don't know what you have until it's gone, but the truth is, they knew. They just thought you'd never leave. They thought you'd stay through the neglect, the silence, the selfishness. You were the calm in the middle of their storm, the steady hand when the world around them shook. But they got comfortable, too comfortable, and in that comfort they forgot to value the very soul that never once gave up on them. You weren't loud, you weren't dramatic, you didn't demand to be seen, but your presence was the most sacred thing they ever had. And now that it's gone, now that the echo of your absence is louder than any words you ever said, they are finally realizing what they lost. Not just someone good, but the best thing they ever had. And the worst part, they'll never get it back. They mistook your silence for weakness. They never understood the language of silence. They were too loud in their ego to notice how deeply you felt things. In their world, shouting meant power, control meant love, and silence. Silence was weakness. They couldn't see that you weren't silent because you had nothing to say. You were silent because you were watching everything. Processing, deciding. You gave them the benefit of the doubt more times than you should have. You let them speak over you, walk ahead of you, take more than they gave. And each time, you remained calm not because you lacked strength, but because you were choosing not to waste it. You saw their chaos, their patterns, the games they played, and yet you stayed silent. Not because you didn't care, but because you cared too much. You thought maybe, just maybe, your silence would show them that not all love needs to be loud, not all loyalty needs to be shouted. But they took it differently. They saw a door wide open and assumed it meant they could come and go as they pleased. They mistook your grace for weakness, your peace for passivity, and your forgiveness for foolishness. But every silent moment was a page in the story. You were writing the story of your departure. You weren't breaking down. You were building up, quietly, patiently. You were becoming the version of yourself who would one day walk away without warning, not out of revenge, not to prove a point, but because you finally realized your silence had spoken enough. The day you left wasn't explosive. It wasn't dramatic. It was just. Over, and that's what shook them most. There were no final words, no arguments, no explanations. Just your absence. And suddenly, everything you didn't say became louder than everything they ever said to you. That's the thing about silence. It doesn't beg, it doesn't fight, it doesn't compete. It just leaves, and when it does, it takes everything with it. The love, the loyalty, the late night understanding, the quiet support they never noticed until it was gone. Now they sit in the noise of their own choices, wondering how they misread the signs, how they lost someone who gave them so many chances without saying a single word. But that's the price of underestimating someone whose power was never in how they shouted, but in how they stayed quiet. You weren't weak, you were wise, and your silence wasn't surrender. It was the sound of your strength preparing to walk away with dignity, with grace, and with the kind of peace no one can take from you ever again. They took your presence for granted. You were always there. Every time they called, every time they needed a hand to hold, a heart to lean on, or just someone to listen, you were the first name they thought of. Not because they valued you deeply, but because they grew used to your presence like air, like light, like something permanent. They never truly looked at you. They never truly saw you. You were the one who remembered their birthdays, who noticed the tremble in their voice when they said, "I'm fine," who stayed up just to make sure they didn't fall apart in silence. You gave without keeping score. You loved without holding back. But over time, that love became background noise to them, always playing, always available. And that's where the heartbreak begins, when someone starts treating something rare as if it's ordinary. They stopped saying thank you. They stopped checking in. They stopped showing up for you, because in their mind you weren't going anywhere. Your reliability became routine to them. They didn't think about how much strength it took for you to be there on days when you were falling apart yourself. They didn't realize that every time you stayed, it was a choice, not an obligation. And the truth is, they never really asked what kept you around. They never wondered what you needed, what you were hiding behind those quiet smiles. They thought your emotional labor was infinite, but even the strongest hands get tired. Even the warmest hearts get cold when they're never held. And one day, they woke up and you were no longer there. Not in anger, not in revenge, but because something inside you finally whispered, it's time. Time to stop pouring into someone who only held out their cup, never asking how yours was doing. Time to protect your peace instead of constantly restoring theirs. And now they feel it, your absence. Suddenly, they're remembering all the ways you made life easier for them. The late night talks, the reminders, the small acts of kindness they never said thank you for. They didn't notice when you stopped texting first. They didn't ask why you became quieter. They thought you were just being off. But really, you were letting go, slowly, quietly, gracefully, and now, what they once saw as normal feels like a gaping hole. That's what happens when you take presence for granted. It vanishes. And when it does, the silence isn't peaceful. It's punishing. Because when someone like you walks away, they don't just lose a person. They lose comfort, consistency, compassion, things not easily replaced. Now they understand. Your presence was a privilege, not a promise, and they lost it. Not because you changed, but because they never appreciated you when you stayed. They thought you'd never leave. They built their comfort on the idea that no matter what they did, you would stay. They counted on your heart, the same heart they kept wounding, to keep forgiving, to keep showing up, to keep bending until it broke. You were always there, weren't you? No matter how many times they ignored your pain, brushed off your feelings, or offered excuses instead of change, you stayed. You kept hoping they'd see your worth before you reached your limit. But they didn't. They thought your loyalty was endless. They saw your patience as permanent. You were the one they leaned on, the one they vented to, the one they turned to, not out of love, but out of habit. And habits can be careless. They stopped trying, they stopped putting in effort, because in their mind you weren't going anywhere. They thought they could throw silence at you after an argument, disappear when it was inconvenient, and you'd still be there when they returned, like you always were. They didn't see the silent countdown inside you. They didn't notice how your tone changed, how your eyes stopped searching for theirs, how your words became shorter, colder, fewer. They didn't understand that love doesn't die in an instant. It dies in slow, painful moments, while the other person isn't watching. And the worst part, they never imagined a version of life where you were gone, until one day you were, not with fireworks, not with screaming, but with a stillness that said everything. You didn't leave to hurt them, you left to save yourself. You tried again and again, but a heart can only break so many times before it quietly walks away. And now they're left in the ruins of their own assumptions. They're replaying the things they said or didn't say, the apologies they never offered, the moments they didn't hold on to you when you were slipping right through their fingers, and it hits them you're really gone. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, irrevocably gone. The warmth is gone, the support, the faith, the quiet strength you carried gone. Now they realize you weren't staying because you were weak. You were staying because you were strong enough to believe in them. Until you weren't, and what hurts the most is knowing they had every chance. You were there through the storm, through the silence, through the cracks, but they took your presence as a guarantee. And when the guarantee expired, they were left with the one thing they never thought they'd face: your absence. They thought you'd never leave, but now they know. Even the most loyal souls will walk away when they're no longer seen, heard, or valued. And when they do, they never look back. They didn't know value until he was gone. It's a strange thing how people can hold treasure in their hands and still search the ground for stones. That's what they did with you. You were the quiet blessing in their life, the steady presence, the one who showed up in ways that didn't scream for attention but still echoed with meaning. You weren't flashy. You didn't try to prove your worth. You just gave time, care, patience, truth. But they were blind to the value of what stood right in front of them. They thought your kindness was ordinary, your loyalty was automatic, your love was replaceable. They didn't understand that rare things don't always come with loud warnings or bright signs. Sometimes value comes in silence, in consistency, in the way someone chooses you again and again without needing a reason. But they overlooked it. They assumed you'd always be around. They saw your love as background music always playing, always there until the day it stopped, and suddenly they were surrounded by silence. That's when it hit them. The quiet things they never noticed, the thoughtful messages, the small gestures, the way you remembered the details, now those things haunt them. They scroll through old conversations, read the words you once said, and realize how much you gave without ever being asked. You were the comfort they never thanked, the home they never appreciated, and now, in your absence, everything feels colder. They look around and no one listens like you did. No one sees them like you did. No one cares without asking for something in return. And now they understand. Your value wasn't in grand gestures. It was in the depth of your presence. They didn't know how much peace you brought until the noise returned. They didn't see how much you held them together until they started falling apart. That's the cruel lesson about taking people for granted. By the time you see their worth, they're already gone. They want one more chance, but they know they don't deserve it. Because you were gold, and they treated you like dust. And now they're left with echoes, memories of what it felt like to be loved by someone who asked for nothing but gave everything. You were the quiet miracle they never recognized, and now they're learning the truth. Not every good thing gets a second appearance. Some losses are final. Some hearts, once walked away, don't turn back. They didn't know your value then, but they know it now, too late, too clearly, too deeply. And that regret, it's heavy, because it's not just about losing someone. It's about realizing you had the best, and didn't even notice. They lost the one who meant he all. You weren't just another person in their life, you were the person, the calm in their storm, the one who stood by them when everyone else faded. You didn't just care, you carried. You carried their secrets, their fears, their dreams, their damage. You listened without judgment, loved without conditions, stayed without demands. In a world full of surface-level connections, you offered depth. And they didn't understand what that meant, not then. Because real love, real presence, doesn't come wrapped in noise. It comes wrapped in quiet sacrifice, unspoken understanding, and unwavering loyalty. You didn't just mean something, you meant everything, but they were too distracted, too selfish, or too broken to see it. They thought they had time. They thought your heart would always stay open. They thought they could take, and you'd never run empty. But you did, because even the strongest souls eventually get tired of being unseen. You weren't asking for much, just for them to meet you halfway, to value your presence, to choose you back. But they kept showing up late. Or not at all. They gave you pieces while you gave them your whole self. And somehow they believed that imbalance could go on forever, until the day it didn't. Until the day you stopped reaching out. Stopped waiting, stopped hoping. They lost you, and with you, they lost the only person who truly understood them. The one who believed in them when they didn't believe in themselves. The one who stayed when everyone else walked away. And now no one else feels the same. No voice soothes them like yours did. No presence grounds them like yours did. They laugh, but it's emptier. They talk, but it's lonelier. Because you weren't just someone, you were the heart of it all. And they know it now. Now that you're gone. Now that the silence is heavier than their excuses. Now that the warmth has turned to cold realization. They try to move on, but nothing fits the way you did. No one sees them the way you saw them. No one holds them together the way your love did. And maybe they won't say it out loud. Maybe pride won't let them admit it, but deep down they know. They didn't just lose a person. They lost a protector, a safe place, a real one, and the most painful part, they'll never find another you. Because souls like yours don't come in pairs. They come once, and if you're lucky, you recognize it before it's too late. But they didn't, and now they're left chasing shadows, wishing they could go back to the moment where you still loved them, and they still had time to love you right.